Hey Valley View friends, it's Mr. Peters here for your lesson on Friday with data analysis um, and the work that we're going to be doing. So the last few days you've really been working hard organizing and collecting data and kind of finding some important information with it. And so that's our goal today, is just kind of go over a few of those terms again. I know yesterday I gave you a few videos to watch. And so now I want to refresh with those terms, and then we're going to practice using some of those skills today as well. So a few of the things, adding and subtracting mixed numbers with like denominators. We'll be doing that when we work with our number plots, the line plots that we have. The line plots that we have today are going to be with fractions, and so we're going to use like denominators and be able to add and subtract using our line plot. I want you to be able to make a line plot, so you should be able to set up your information, put out your x's there so you can see how much you have of each. And then one other thing here for this, the person who does the work is the only one who learns. So make sure, this is really important for you guys while you're doing your virtual learning here. If you are pushing through and working hard and doing all that great stuff that I know you guys can do and that the fourth grade teachers love, if you keep that up while you're at home, you are going to be the people who are doing the learning. Okay, so make sure that you're pushing yourself to learn. If you need help, always reach out and ask. We can help you. Your moms or dads could help, older brothers, sisters. But remember that ultimately it has to be you that's doing the work if you want to be the one doing the learning. All right. So quick review of some of our terms that we have here. So we have data, line plot, median, mode, range. And so for data is really, or data, whatever way you want to pronounce it, is really just a collection of any information, any numbers that you have. It could be your scores on a test this school year. So maybe for reading, you got an 80%, a 90%, and a 95%. That's all data. That's all scores. It's all numbers. A line plot is just a fancy way to organize your information. And the nice thing about that is it gives you a visual to show the information. And then you guys have worked with those. And so it really shows kind of what numbers happen the most, that mode. It shows you your range. What's your highest number? What's your lowest number? So doing a line plot really helps set things up. So these other terms, though, I'm going to jump up, to this one here where it says mean. And so mean, it says commonly used in sport to find out a score in a sport like football, basketball, or cricket. And so mean is another word for average. And so the way that works out, you may have heard of things like a batting average or your average score for something. And so the way that you do that is that you add up all the numbers that you have in your data. So 3 plus 4 plus 8 plus 7 plus 5 plus 3. And so you get your total number, and that adds up to 30. And you end up dividing it by the number of numbers that you have in your data. So we had 6 numbers here. So our total 30 divided by 6 equals 5. So the average of that score would be a 5. Another important one that can be helpful is the median. The median, simple way to say it, is the middle. But remember, we talked about this the other day, like if you were lining up according to your age. I can't just pick up middle kid in class and say you're the middle age in class. We'd have to line you up from youngest to oldest. And whoever that student was that was in the middle, that would be the middle number. And so you can see here, they have the numbers lined up, and 5 is the one that is in the middle set. And then this part on number 3 right here is really important. If there are 2 values in the middle, find the mean of these 2. So that means what would be in between them. So for example, if you had a 5 and a 6, and they were tied for being in the middle, well, what's halfway between 5 and 6? Halfway between 5 and 6 is 5.5. So you could have a decimal or a fraction, a mixed number, as your median sometimes. Mode, once again, is just kind of a fancy word for the word that, or the number that occurs the most. Mode, most. That's how I always remembered it as a kid. Their example here is, what is the mode of goals kicked by a footballer after each round? And so they show the different rounds of the kicks. And so 1 kick in a game, 2 kicks in this game, 2 kicks. And so each of these would be a game. And so eventually the 2 that appeared the most would be 2 had 2 of them, and then 6 had 2 of them. So whatever number you see the most, or if on a line plot, it's whichever one would have the most X's. Not the highest number, but the most X's on the line plot. And then range, once again, is the difference between the highest and lowest value. And remember, that highest value, we call it the maximum. And then the lowest value would be called the minimum. So the difference between them. So once again, on this number set, we've got 9 and we have 1. And so the difference between them would be 9 minus 1. There's 8. That is the range of your numbers. So just to give you guys an update, here are the answers for the work that you did over the last few days. So if you haven't had a chance to double check your work yet, feel free to check these right now. If you need to pause the video to look at the work that you have in your student book. I want you to notice that the fractions that we have some that are whole numbers, like Lucas was a whole hour. And then we have others that we had that were half hours, so 1.5 hours. And we have fourths as well. So it's either a full hour, a half hour, or a fourth. And so we have fourths like this one, which is 3/4. Okay. So check your data that you had with that. And if you had this data correctly sorted out, then you would be able to go over here. And when you did your line plot, it should have ended up looking something like this. Okay. And what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of just review the questions that we had down here to see what the information would have been. Okay. So the first thing is that they wanted you to calculate the total amount of time spent in the pool by the first 5 students. And so if you notice, there's a few X's here, these 2, this one, and this one. And then this guy over here, they're a little bit darker, a little bit more bold. Those are the first 5 kids. And so the first 5 kids were these 5: Tristan, Tamara, Ben, George, and Henry. And once again, so we did this the other day. And so we have it laid out. And so when you add up those times, we would have had 3/4 plus 1 1/4. That would be 2. Plus our other 2 is 4. Plus our 1 here is 5. And then 3/4. So you should have gotten to a total of 5 3/4 on this problem. Now I want to jump down to these ones though, because they're a little bit different from what we did the other day. We didn't get a chance to do all this. So circle and label the minimum and maximum in the pool. So once again, we're going to go back up here. And so the minimum, the lowest amount of time that somebody spent in the pool was right here. So that one is the minimum. And so we know that because if we look at our time, there's no X's at 0. Everybody went in at least a little bit. Everybody went in at least 15 minutes or 1/4 of an hour. And then here, finally, that half hour. So that's the minimum amount of time. Now, the maximum amount of time, that one kid who is a crazy fish spent 2.5 hours in the pool. And right now, with our line plot, we don't know who that kid is. We could always go back and look at our other table here, and we'd be able to figure out who that kid is. But right now with our line plot, we're not worried about exactly who it is. We just are worried about the numbers of the whole group. So we have our minimum and our maximum right there. Then it says determine and label the range or difference between the greatest value and the least value in the data. So if we go back here again, our maximum was 2.5 and our minimum was 1/2. So what we need to do for this problem is we are really trying to do 2 1/2 minus 1/2, which equals 2 wholes. Now, if subtracting fractions is challenging for you or a little bit tricky at times, a line plot's a great way to do this thinking. And what you could simply do is you could see how far you jumped. So if you look at 1/2, we could go up to 1 1/2. That's a jump of 1. And then you could do your other jump from 1 1/2 to 2.5, and that's another 1. So we had a total jump of 2. Okay, so you could do it using the numbers, or you could do it and look at how many or how big your jumps were. Going back down here, find the mode or the value that appears most often. So with this one, once again, if you put your X's on the right spots, it should be pretty easy when you have a line plot set up to figure out what the mode is. And so which number appears the most often? That would be 1 1/2. So 1 1/2. And that's because we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 X's on there. So there's 6 kids that spent that amount of time in the pool. So I'm just going to put that there for this one. We'll get rid of our work here. And so that's 1 1/2, because remember, mode is the number that had the most X's when we did the line plot. Then find the value or the middle value or the median. So remember that median one, we have to line up our X's, which by doing a line plot, they already are lined up. If I just gave you this chart right here and I said find the median, you wouldn't be able to find it right away. It would be kind of tricky. Excuse me, you'd ultimately probably line them all up again and have to do what we did on our line plot. So right here we have them lined up nicely. And so I'm going to switch my marker here, and I'm going to gradually work my way to the middle. So I'm going to get rid of 1 on the bottom, 1 on the top, another 1 on the bottom, another 1 on the top, bottom, top. And I'm going to gradually work my way towards the center. And so right here we have a tie, but they are both on 1 1/2. So our median value for this is the same as our mode. It just so happened that they matched up. Okay. So that is how we would find the minimum, the maximum, the range, the mode, and the median. Okay. If we are going to ask you, if the 4th grade teachers were going to ask you to find the mean of this data, we would most likely give you a calculator for it. It's kind of tricky work to do. We have a lot of numbers here. But remember, what you would do is you would add up all the numbers. And this is where this might actually be a little bit easier. Add them all up and then divide them by the number we have. But we don't need to worry about that right now. Once again, here are some of those terms. We have range, which is the difference between the greatest and least values. So on this data set, we had 4 all the way from 4 up to 13. So the range is from 4 to 13, which is a range of 9. Mode, once again, the number that appears the most. All the numbers appear only once, except for 11. It appears twice, so it is the mode. Median, once again, the middle number is the 8. But remember, you have to line up those numbers first, your values. All right, so here's your work for the day. And so once again, this is on page 239. And so with this, it's 16 of the kids who swam at the pool, swimming pool fundraiser had a contest to see how many laps they could each swim in 5 minutes. So here's the kids' work, or what they swam. And then here's the line plot. Now, one of the big things you want to do when you first look at your line plot is see if they filled out the numbers on the bottom here. Okay, this time they filled them out for you. And I want you to notice the value. They all are eighths. But when you look at our chart up here, some of them are not eighths. We've got fourths, we've got halves. So what you need to ask yourself is, well, 5 1/2. Well, if we're doing eighths, what is half of 8? It would be 4. So what you can do to make it a little bit easier for yourself is write in right here the value with it there. So 1/2 is the same as 4/8. So this would be the same. Tristan's time would be 5 and 4/8. I know it's a little sloppy there. Let me see if I can clean that up a bit. Okay, so 5 and 4/8. Same thing for Craig right above him. Now, if we look down here at Bridget, Bridget had 4 and then 1/4. Well, how many eighths? So if we are trying to do that, it would be the same as 2/8, because remember, if we double our 4, we get to 8. So if we double the 4, we have to double the 1, which is 2. Okay. So there's a few different ways we can go about doing that. So just be careful that you make sure that you're working with the right one, and then you're going to start laying your information out. So for Melissa, 4 and 3/4. Once again, 3/4 is the same as 6/8. So I'm going to go to 4 6/8. Sorry about that. 4 6/8. Now, one of the things you might want to do along your way is check off that you have her information marked already. Okay? So you'll continue to fill out this line plot with the X's. And then read the questions. Now, once again, read the questions carefully, because even here on number 2, how many students swam 5 1/8 laps or more? So we need to include 5 1/8 and all of them that are more. So 5 1/8 is included. Whereas here on question 3, how many students swam fewer than 5 laps? There's the big hint in there. It has to be fewer than 5 laps. It does not say 5 laps and fewer or fewer. It just says swam fewer than 5 laps. So 5 laps would not be included on that one. So make sure you double check that you're being careful. Now find the range. Once again, once you get your X's down on there, it'll be pretty simple. You'll see how far apart your 2 X's are. And you can do that doing a subtraction problem, or you could simply count up how many eighths. So if you, let's say, for example, we were right here and we wanted to count up to here, I could say 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I could say 13 eighths, and I could even switch that to a mixed number if I wanted as well, but we're fine with the improper fraction or a mixed number. So you can count it out. You could do a few different options for that. So let me get rid of those so that we don't get confused. And then one more thing here for us, 240 for our student book. For this one, once again, you're going to create a line plot. So if we look at our information here, we can recognize that we're working with 4ths and 8ths. But down on our line plot right now, we don't have, oh my goodness, we don't have all of the information down here yet. Okay. Now, if you look though, you could see that we have 3 4/8 and 4 2/8. So it seems to me like we're going to be using eighths. And you could simply check to see when you count 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That will confirm it for you of what denominator you should be putting there. So once again, you'll want to fill out the bottom part there first. Once you've put your fractions, or sorry, your mixed numbers there, then you'll be ready to put your X's on here. Now, one of the things you could do, and I've seen students do this in the past just to make it easier to organize their stuff, is when they have something like this, they might actually put their real letter there. So if you look for Snell A, it says 4 1/4. Remember, 1/4 is the same as 2/8. So you might put the letter A right there instead of putting X's. It could work either way. All right, so that is your lesson for today. Once again, if you're stuck on something, always feel free to go back and look in the videos. Also, look back at the videos that we supplied yesterday. Use Khan Academy as a resource. We have lots of great digital resources for you to use. So good luck. Stay safe. We miss you guys. And get out and enjoy the lovely weather a little bit. Get outside and get a little bit of fresh air.